All right, fellas, when it comes to UFC champions, we have barely had any of them change hands this year, and on average, we usually have 5 to 7 champions losing their belts. We've only had 2 so far, and we're more than halfway through the year. We've had Sean Strickland take the belt from Chimaev in a razor-close split decision, and we've had Justing Gaethje put on an absolutely generational one against Ilia Topuria. But aside from that, we've had diddly squat. We've had Carlos Olberg and Jiri Prochazka for a vacant title, but aside from, we've had no changes with the champions, but it is going to change through the rest of this year and leading into next year. I am going to be telling you how every single UFC champion we have at the moment is going to lose their belt. And I'm going to be giving you a confidence meter out of 10 for every single reasoning I have for each champion losing their belt. So kicking it off with Flyweight and how Joshua Van loses his belt. Now this kid is looking great. You know, he's super young. The guy's full of confidence after beating Tatsuro Taira. Rounding out his game really well, he was able to get back to the feet, just really answer the ground game, and obviously his striking is great. His boxing, his output is ridiculous. So getting him out of there on the feet is going to be extremely difficult, but having someone that's going to have a well-rounded game with the experience and that's just going to make him uncomfortable and really drown him out is the only way that he's really going to get beaten at the moment, unless he's completely getting sparked out, Charles Johnson style. But realistically, I think you know where I'm heading with this. I just think Alexandre Pantoja, even though he's had the injury layoff, I don't think it's going to mean much. Pantoja was out for less than a year, and Joshua Van has never dealt with pressure that Pantoja can bring that's been utilized over 5 rounds consistently in his fights. And the control and the ability to grind out Joshua Van, that's going to be a huge problem. I think Alexandre Pantoja can make Joshua Van wilt, and he just hasn't dealt with those problems before. Granted, the Tatsuro Taira fight was a dog fight. Same with the Brandon Royval fight, but they're different kinds of fights. Alexandre Pantoja has a lot better striking on the feet in terms of just making the opponent uncomfortable compared to Tatsuro Taira. And don't get me wrong, when it comes to the grappling, the get-ups, and all that, Joshua Van is definitely improved, but in comparison to the experience that Alexandre Pantoja has, and especially still out the gates against Tatsuro Taira, Joshua Van was still getting controlled heavily for 3 out of those 5 rounds, especially in the first round. And we see what Pantoja can do with his control and his ability to grind out his opponents early into the fights. And granted, on the feet, Van's more technical than Pantoja and could hurt him, could potentially finish him, but Pantoja is stupidly durable. The guy has got a steel chin, and the fact that he has these off-rhythm flurries, it's going to keep Joshua Van guessing. And to that point, the level changes. I just don't see a world where Pantoja doesn't get Joshua Van down, unless he's dislocating his shoulder or his bloody elbow again. But Pantoja, man, this guy has the durability advantage as well. Like, Van doesn't have this titanium chin like Pantoja does. Pantoja can drop people on the feet, can hurt people on the feet, and with him not being out for that long, having the experience advantage, having fought dangerous strikers, whereas Van hasn't faced these elite, consistent grapplers. I think the moment that Pantoja comes into that fight in the rematch as an underdog, crazy to me, I think he's going to be able to drown Joshua Van out. I still think it's going to be competitive, but I think he drowns him out towards the mid rounds. But if not Pantoja, if Manel Kape is going to be next after that, which he should be, I do think Manel Kape sparks Joshua Van out. They're basically the same strike speed, but Manel Kape is just so much more punishing with that KO power. But Pantoja's first, and I think he's taking that belt. And I'm going to have it as a 7.5 out of 10 confidence in that pick. Just because Pantoja is coming off a layoff still regardless. If he wasn't, I would be taking him probably at like a 9 out of 10 realistically. But 7.5 because of the layoff. But regardless, I still think Pantoja is taking that belt away from Van this year. Now, in a bantamweight, we've got Petr Yan as the champion, and realistically, I think Petr Yan retires with the belt because no one beats the Petr Yan that beat Merab. He is so on lock defensively. His takedown defense was incredible. His guard is basically mission impossible to crack through. And his offensive striking, his timing, his judo is just really peaking at the moment. He is at the prime of his powers. And even though, granted, we've got the trilogy happening between Merab and Jan most likely, both of them did have injuries in the respective fights that they did lose. And granted, Merab was more dominant in that first fight than Jan was in the second fight. But the fact that Jan has just completely stapled that takedown defense to the point where he was so comfortable against Merab, he was getting his own takedown offense against him, is ridiculous. I just think he has too many answers solidified for Merab in that trilogy rematch. And even against the rest of the division, Jan can wrestle. He's extremely difficult to control. His defensive grappling is top tier. He's incredibly durable. He's got power for 5 rounds consistently and just gets better round after round. And just so technically elite, and compared to the only challenges that he has in Merab, in Umar Nurmagomedov, and Sean O'Malley, I still think that he is beating all 3 of them. And don't get me wrong, O'Malley's got the length and the speed, which is an issue. And, you know, he did win the first fight technically. I know it's controversial. But Jan, over 5 rounds, the way he picks up the pace and gets his reads is just going to be so much better for him compared to their first fight, which was 3 rounds. And Jan has the clear advantage on the ground, clear advantage in the clinch. He's got more options to beat O'Malley, and I think he does. And then Umar, who's the only other one that could potentially challenge him here, is difficult because of the Taekwondo base and the kicking game in combination with the wrestling. But cardio over time for Umar has been a bit suspect against Merab, and he just hasn't looked like this bulletproof dude fighting these guys like Mario Bautista, even Davison Figueiredo to an extent. And against Jan's just going to be able to get more reads as the fight goes on. He'll give him problems, especially with the boxing range, and especially at points. Man, I think Petr Yan can compete on the ground. I just think he is the better overall technical striker regardless. So in terms of Petr Yan retiring, I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10 on my confidence meter, just because he has a ways to go, and we also don't have a confirmed prospect in the next 3 odd years that could jump out of nowhere and beat Yan, especially with Yan being 33 years old now and moving through to like 35, 36 if he's still got the belt. Hopefully he retires, but at that point, we just never know. So I've got to give it that 7 out of 10 confidence. But I do think he beats Merab in the trilogy, he beats Sean O'Malley in the rematch, and then he beats Umar Nurmagomedov as a fresh contender. Now, moving on to featherweight, where we have my lord and savior, Alexander Volkanovski, as the champion. Now, I'm sure 90% of you agree. We want Volk to have his fairy tale ending. The only thing that's against Volk, realistically, is his mindset. And you can't take it away from him. Obviously, he's performing extremely well, but I feel like he's a guy that would fight till he's 50. I'm not gonna lie. But Volk, being 37 years old now, and probably will be 38 by the time he fights Movsar Evloev, which is gonna be the next matchup. Look, even though Evloev is undefeated, stylistically, it's the best fight Volk could have right now. It's the fight that I am very keen on, because Volk competes with Evloev's wrestling, but just has better footwork on the feet. So I think Volk outstrikes Evloev to a decision in their fight that's going to come later this year. So he's still going to have the belt then. It all depends on this point of his decision making. Does he beat Evloev, have the fairy tale ending where he's beaten a Russian undefeated guy after his Islam stint that didn't go his way? Does he retire off that? Which, please do. I love you, Volk. I don't want to see you fight again, just because of that chance where you could get chinned, because everything is still in check for Volk. His fight IQ is off the charts, his movement, his footwork, it's all great for now, but his chin, it is crackable. Like, I love this guy. I'm not going to glaze. The fact of the matter is, his chin is suspicious. And the problem is, after Evloev, if Gene Silva beats Yair at UFC Noche, which he will, and Volk doesn't retire, Gene Silva fights Volk, I do think Gene Silva finishes Volk and takes his belt. I think Volk is more technically skilled than him. It's just the power difference. Gene Silva, if he cracks, he's cracking. He's gonna knock you out. And I do think that that's just gonna be the same for Volk, as much as I bloody hate to say it. Volk, I do think, would probably get knocked out because he relies on the speed, the timing, like the agility and the footwork, which just gets worse with age. And by the time he's fighting Gene Silver, he's probably going to be like 38 to 39, almost 40 years old. So unless he can really give Gene Silver problems on the ground and just drown him out, I just think Gene Silver will be too dynamic and powerful for him. So I'm going to take it from the point that Volk does retire after Evloev, because even beating Evloev, it's not going to be an easy fight. It's going to be really draining because of the wrestling exchanges. And I think from there, I don't think he has anything else to prove. I don't think he really cares about fighting Gene Silver. So for him retiring, I'm going to have it as a 9 out of 10 confidence. I'm very confident about this because just stylistically, I think he has a clear path to beating Evloev. And if he does that and he retires, perfection. Now moving on to the lightweight division, where we have Justing Gaethje, who is having the time of his bloody life right now. And as much as that title win was generational, I gotta say Justing Gaethje, at least in the men's weight classes, he is the most volatile champion at the moment, because there are decent arguments for every challenger to beat him. I mean, Arman, he's got the youth, the power, the wrestling. Max Holloway beat the brakes off him last time. Quillan Salkild has all the momentum on his side and has threats from everywhere. And Ilia Topuria just needs to punch his liver through his bloody spine again and not try and submit him, and realistically, he'll win that fight.
Come on, man, what the fuck is you doing, cuz?
And Charles Oliveira smoked him badly in their first fight and is bad stylistically for him. And look, I'm not saying any of these guys are just guaranteed to beat Gaethje. Gaethje is an absolute dog and he has the chance to beat every single one of them. But with how the division's lining up and how he is aging, I am more concerned in almost every single matchup, and realistically, in terms of stylistically being bad, I think Charles Oliveira is going to be next for the title, and I think he's going to be able to finish him, and he's realistically going to be next because they're looking at Ilia Topuria versus Paddy potentially. Arman versus Hoofy is already booked. Max Holloway is coming off a loss. Who else do you give Justing Gaethje? And Gaethje wants Charles, he wants the rematch. And that's the problem. I just don't think it's going to go his way. But don't get me wrong, Gaethje can potentially KO him. If he's doing that to Ilia, he can do it to anyone. But we did see it in the first fight. Gaethje just doesn't have the precision to outwork Charles cleanly on the feet, whereas Charles has more tools, has the power, and has a much stronger ground game. And realistically, when it comes to that, I just see kind of a repeat of the first fight. Might sound lazy, but I just genuinely think it's true. And I got an 8.5 out of 10 confidence on this, because if Charles Oliveira, who has the clear path to getting a title fight next as the BMF champion, man, I just don't see Gaethje having a great time in that fight. So Charles Oliveira is going to be taking that belt probably towards the end of the year or start of the next year. 8.5 out of 10 confidence. The only reason why it's not higher is because Gaethje, just like the first fight, has the potential to knock him out early doors, but if it goes any further or Charles gets his way at any point and gets it to the ground, Gaethje's losing that belt. Now, in at welterweight, of course, we have Islam Makhachev, or of course, time could make me look like an absolute idiot or an absolute genius, depending on if UFC 330 is over or not. You might be watching this after the fact, and Ian Gary could have just destroyed him in the first round. I don't know, but I'm really taking it from the point that Islam Makhachev's wrestling was going to be too much, going to win a competitive decision, or he was just going to choke him out in a scramble or something like that. But regardless, either that's going to nip that straight in the butt, or my opinion straight in the butt, or we're going to see Islam move on as the champion. And realistically, I see him doing that, of course. And at welterweight, on the ground, is anyone going to be giving him any real issues? No, because he's thick as hell at welterweight, but the problem is he gives up a lot of size. He's one of the shortest guys in the division, and his reach is tiny in comparison to the rest of the division, and Islam can get tagged on the feet from guys with good footwork and good range. I mean, we saw Dustin Poirier permanently scar him, and we've got guys that have the striking caliber of Dustin Poirier at welterweight that are just as skilled but have a lot more power. And the guy that's going to be next is Carlos Prates. And don't get me wrong, Islam can potentially take him down and sub him, but on the biggest flip side of the century, Carlos Prates has 8 inches of reach on him, and it just takes one shot from Carlos Prates. And with the power that he has, with the knees, with the elbows, with literally every part of all 4 of his limbs, that's a lot for Islam Makhachev to think about. And hot damn take, I think Nutella Cake chins Islam Makhachev early in their fight. But it's going to be a complete 50-50 split because either Islam submits him or Prates chins him badly. I just got that inkling that Carlos Prates is going to ping a Nutella Cake straight down the pipe and knock down Islam Makhachev. And Islam gets knocked down, Prates is just going to split him from consciousness. He hasn't faced that power before. And I genuinely think, I know it's a hot take, probably going to get flamed in the comments, but I think it just genuinely can be as simple as that. And if they fight, I'm gonna take Prates to take him out in the first 2 rounds. Now that is obviously a 5 out of 10 confidence pick. It's either Islam submits him or Prates finishes him, but I'm gonna be taking the eventual bloody underdog in that fight. Nutella Cake. Now, in at middleweight, we have somehow got America's golden child back as the champ. We got Sean Strickland, and this motherfucker is so hard to get out of there. He's so difficult to outbox. He's so hard to find openings against. He's got great defensive grappling. And realistically, who's next is Nassourdine Imavov. Can he beat Sean Strickland? He's going to make it competitive, but I don't think he beats him. I don't see him outboxing Sean Strickland, and I don't think his wrestling is good enough to beat Sean Strickland. I mean, Khamzat, if he couldn't get Sean Strickland out of there in the first 10 minutes, Nassourdine with his wrestling is not going to be able to do so either. And speaking of Khamzat Chimaev, Khamzat needs another fight at middleweight, or he might just go up to 205. But the fact is, if he can't submit Sean Strickland, who else is going to submit Sean Strickland? So that really takes out a lot of these heavy wrestling-based guys if they can't consistently strike with Sean. And Sean over 5 rounds, man, Khamzat, I just don't think can deal with him again. I think that gas tank has been completely skewed from COVID pouring bloody blood into his lungs. I just don't see Khamzat Chimaev beating Sean Strickland in a rematch. And realistically, the only one who beats him, and has easily before, is Dricus du Plessis. I mean, he's looking at a title shot again with one more win, I think. If he gets a win either over Brendan Allen or the winner of RoboCop and Fluffy Hernandez, I think he's got that title shot in the bag for the 3rd fight. And I just can't see Dricus not winning that fight as long as he makes sure that he is chaotic like he was before. He needs to be throwing random Looney Tune shit, and as long as he's doing that, he's gonna win. But if he tries to be technical, and as technical as he was against Kamaru Usman, granted, different style of fight, Usman had the heavy takedown threat, but if he tries to be as technical like that, Sean Strickland's going to outstrike him, similar to the first fight. But if he is chaotic, mixes in those takedowns just like he did at UFC 312, he's gonna be able to win this fight, and pretty convincingly. And to that point, I think Strickland holds onto the belt, gets through Nassourdine Imavov, but then after that point, he fights Dricus du Plessis for their 3rd fight, and he loses his belt. I got a 7 out of 10 confidence on this because Strickland obviously has to get through Imavov first, and there could potentially be a Chimaev skew in there somewhere where he gets to fight. But aside from that, Dricus du Plessis, as long as he is keeping that same game plan that he had in their 2nd fight, my confidence is going to be going up. But just the fact that Sean Strickland has to get through a defense first, and Dricus du Plessis probably needs another fight first, and we have to then have that lineup afterwards, I can't put my confidence level any higher, but I'm still decently confident. Now, in at light heavyweight, we've got Carlos Ulberg, who definitely at this point in time is one of the toughest puzzles to solve as a champion, because he's basically just the reincarnate of fucking Alex Pereira. His counter striking is elite. He's faster than pretty much everyone in that division, bar like Khalil Roundtree. But the ACL tear and the layoff, while being 35 to 36 years old when he comes back, does make things a little bit shaky for him. I don't think he's bulletproof. Now, does anyone convincingly beat him? I don't think so. Now, the only one that I actually see giving him a proper KO threat is actually Yuri Prochazka.
You serious?
I mean, he's just so wild and unorthodox, and I know that's a crazy hot take, because obviously in their fight before, Yuri just showed mercy and had his chin grounded into dust, but Yuri still has that unorthodox style and was still realistically winning that first fight up until he showed mercy. But realistically, if there's going to be anyone that has a chance of beating Olberg, whether it's by a KO, TKO or not, it's gonna be Ankalaev.
Oh, come on!
And I know it's boring, but it's just true. Olberg is elite on the back foot and Ankalaev is elite on the front foot. It's a complete 50-50 fight, but Ankalaev is the only one that can give Olberg a real 50-50 fight at this point, because Ankalaev is staying active. He's someone that has 5-round cardio proven and has wrestling tools there if he wants to utilize them. So he's the most experienced guy, the guy with the highest fight IQ that Carlos Olberg would have ever faced by a country mile, and is the younger guy as well. So realistically, I've got another 5 out of 10 coin flip here. Confidence that Ankalaev is gonna take the belt from Carlos Olberg in their fight when Carlos Olberg comes back. I don't think Olberg defends his belt. Now, in at heavyweight, we have got Tom Aspinall, who at one point I definitely thought was completely invincible. And realistically, even though Tom is pretty much clinically blind at this point, even being clinically blind, 14 out of 15 of those contenders are not beating this dude in the rankings. Aside from the one that made him clinically blind, Cyril Gane is the only one that I can see beating this dude. Because the more that time goes on, and the more that Cyril Gane improves his defensive wrestling and his grappling, his chances of winning are going to be going up considerably, because we saw how much Aspinall was struggling with the speed of that jab and the footwork of Cyril Gane along the outside. Aspinall is not the better technical striker out of the two of them, plain and simple. And as much as people are going to hate that Cyril Gane could become champion from being a serial cheater, it's just a fact of the matter. When they get locked in that cage, Cyril Gane is the better striker, and if Tom Aspinall cannot get him down or knock him out early, Cyril Gane can take it deep, because at least Cyril Gane has seen 5 rounds. Tom Aspinall finishes everyone in a couple minutes. And if that's the point, Tom Aspinall has never felt rounds 3 to 4 to 5 in his career, and that's going to be a huge problem for him. And when that fight comes around, again, it might sound boring, but I have to give it a 50-50 split here, because Gane, coming into that fight, having the better overall technical striking versus Tom Aspinall, who has the ground game advantage and definitely the jiu-jitsu advantage and the power advantage. To that point, from what we got to see of that little bit of the first fight, I genuinely think, from going from Tom Aspinall being a 5-1 favorite, I think this genuinely should be a pick'em fight when they have their rematch later this year. So I'm giving a 5 out of 10 confidence for Cyril Gane to take this fight, but I actually am going to be taking Cyril Gane taking the belt away from Tom Aspinall. Now, in at strawweight, we've currently got Mackenzie Dern as the champion. Obviously, that could change with Gillian Robertson at UFC 330. And along with Justing Gaethje, Mackenzie Dern is definitely the most beatable champion out of every single one. But to be fair to her, I do think that she gets through Gillian Robertson. Again, could look like an idiot, but realistically, after that, I think we're all thinking it. When Wei Li comes down, she's going to be taking that belt away from Mackenzie Dern, because Wei Li is basically a Werner Jandiroba with better striking tools. And we saw how close that fight was between Dern and Jandiroba. And granted, I think the BJJ does get edged to Mackenzie Dern, but the wrestling, the striking, the power, all fairly considerable to Wei Li, and she's also just stronger in general. So I'm pretty confident that when Wei Li comes back, she's going to take the belt from Mackenzie Dern. I've got that as an 8.5 out of 10 for my confidence meter. Obviously, Mackenzie Dern can be improving through that. Wei Li is older as well, and we could see Mackenzie Dern just really bring out a firefight on the feet. And Wei Li maybe not take her down because of the jiu-jitsu. But realistically, if I'm going to be picking one of them, Wei Li is going to be getting her belt back against Mackenzie Dern when they fight. Now, in at flyweight, we've of course got Valentina Shevchenko, but this one was one of the most interesting ones that I had to think about out of every single champion, because Valentina is almost 39 years old now, so I think she's only got like 1 or 2 fights left in her. And next up, she's probably going to be fighting Natalia Silva, which on the feet, she's got a lot to handle there. She could potentially get finished, but realistically, Valentina's ground game is just going to consume her. I think she'll snatch a decision against Natalia Silva there. But what I do see happening, and it might sound absolutely wild after that fact, I think she beats Natalia Silva, gets her 4th title defense, moves up to fight Kayla Harrison for a super fight, gets out controlled, and she loses. I just think the weight difference between women's divisions is just too much. I mean, we got to literally see that with Valentina against Wei Li. It's going to be much the same with Kayla Harrison. Probably more competitive there, but still the same result. So I think she loses that fight. I feel like Valentina has that mentality where she's like, I want to go back down to my weight class and end my career on a win with the title. And at that point where she's gone through Natalia Silva, she's then gone up and fought Kayla Harrison, and she moves back down for another fight, which is going to be at 40 odd years old. And realistically, if she's going to come back down, the person that she's going to be fighting is probably going to be Manon Fior, who at that point is still old, but she's not as old as Valentina Shevchenko. Their first fight was razor close, and at 40 years old with Manon, I mean, granted, she's probably going to have a bit of an edge with the strike speed there. She's got the strength, and I don't think Valentina Shevchenko is really going to be able to take her down and control her, because Manon is a BJJ black belt as well. I just think at that point, if Valentina has gone from fighting Natalia Silva, wins, gets that title defense, then goes and fights Kayla Harrison, loses the super fight, comes back down at 40 odd years of age with her belt still, I just think at 40 years old, she's going to be losing to a girl like Manon Fior, who is strong, who has had her reads of her across 5 rounds before, made it razor close, and is going to be the younger fighter. I think Manon Fior beats Valentina Shevchenko in a decision in that fight when she comes back down and she loses her belt. It could be a crazy take there, because obviously she could beat Natalia Silva and just call it a day. We don't know, but I think she's going to be hungry for that double champ route. I mean, we've heard it before in the media. Like, we've heard it from Kayla Harrison. We've also heard it from Valentina at points too. But if it's going to go the way I think it's going to go, beating Natalia, losing to Kayla, coming back down, and then losing to Manon Fior, I have that as a 6 out of 10 confidence. But otherwise, I mean, if she doesn't go up, I think she just retires with the belt. But I do think that that's the way it's going to go. It's a long shot. Call me Mystic Mac gone wrong. But I feel like that has some potential there. So I'm going to give that a 6 out of 10 confidence that Valentina Shevchenko loses her belt in the rematch to Manon Fior when she's 40 odd years old. Now, lastly, in at Bantamweight, we've got Kayla Harrison, which is my most confident pick here. And I simply think Kayla Harrison retires with the belt. I see her beating Amanda Nunes in their upcoming fight. Nunes has been out too long. She's older. And then if Shevchenko comes up for the fight, you already know what I think. I think she beats Shevchenko in that super fight, retains her belt, and then from there, if she's beaten Amanda Nunes and Valentina Shevchenko, the literal 2 best women's MMA fighters of all time, while she's also getting older, she has literally nothing else to prove. That division has absolutely nothing for her, and she retires undefeated in the UFC, and I have got that as a 9.5 out of 10 confidence that she retires with the belt, beating definitely Amanda Nunes and potentially Shevchenko. Now, fellas, this is a very big hot take video. So as you know, I'm going to be very interested to hear your comments down below of when you think every single one of these champions are going to lose their belt, or if they just retire with the belt. So definitely leave a comment down below what you think. And if you haven't already, definitely just check out the video on the screen for more MMA-based content. And please like, comment, subscribe. Goes a long way for the channel. And I hope to catch you in the next one. Have a great day. Laters.